Hello, dear ones, and happy Friday. I want to do something a little different today. Instead of writing an email message, I want to read you a story. The story comes from one of my favorite children's Bibles, the Book of Belonging. And why do I want to read that to you right now? Well, here's the thing. We are thick in the season of Lent. And Lent, in the history, in the rhythms of the church, is the time that we are preparing ourselves for Holy Week to observe Jesus' passion. And in doing so, we focus on our return to God and the God who meets us in our return and in our need to be saved. Now, this is meant to be a beautiful endeavor in which we shed all that is life draining, all that hinders our relationship with God, so that we can go home and find rest. But as you know, there are many times in which the church and her leaders have got this message wrong and have used this season of Lent to focus on heaping on shame and guilt and anxiety about who we are before God. So I want to read to you the story from the Old Testament that we heard this past Sunday. It's that well-known story of Adam and Eve in the garden. It's a story that, as you know, has been used to promote guilt and shame. But the writers of this story spin it in a different light, perhaps than you grew up hearing. And I want to share that with you. So our story today is called The Garden of Forgotten Names. God planted a spectacular garden where Eve and Adam would live and work, a safe and lovely place of belonging. You see, God loved Eve and Adam and had a beautiful dream for them. I will make you like me, so I want you to care for the gardens and the animals just as I would, God told them. There was so much to learn about, and what a glad time God would have holding their hands and teaching them. Step by step, they would learn God's wisdom, which leads to a good and peaceful life. I belong with you, and you belong with me. Come, let me show you how to live. In the middle of the garden, there were two trees, the tree of life and the good and bad knowledge tree. And God warned them, eat from any tree in the garden except the good and bad knowledge tree. You are not ready for that knowledge yet. It'll lead to death and destruction. God knew that having so much knowledge without learning wisdom would only hurt and harm them. God was protecting them from that harm and asking them to trust God's dream. So there they were, God, Eve, and Adam, the fish, the birds, all the animals, all together, just as they belonged, among the great green growing things. A grand garden party indeed. Imagine their days, climbing the fruit trees to gather food, flipping and swinging with the monkeys, lemurs, squirrels, and sloths, chattering at the birds, caring for the plants and flowers and the honeybees, and as the butterflies danced around their heads, and as the rabbits tumbled around their feet with tapirs and armadillos. Riding elephants, splashing into the river, and swimming among the schools of fish and platypuses. Sleeping snuggled with ocelots and oryx and capybaras, and crickets wheeled and sang as God's spirit shushed among the brushes. They all had what they needed to live and to flourish. They grew and learned from God, and it was good, just as God had said. It was like a wild, happy childhood from a fairy tale. But like most fairy tales, the story has a crisis, and it starts with a crafty talking snake. The snake approached Eve and Adam as they frolicked through the garden, wild, naked, and free. Did God really say you couldn't eat from any tree in the garden? The snake asked. We eat from all the trees, Eve replied. Well, except the one in the center. God told us it would lead to death. The snake laughed in a way that made Eve feel silly and small. Death and doom? Oh, no, no, no. God is keeping things from you. The fruit won't make you die. It'll make you smart like God, said the snake. The snake was very crafty. Crafty enough to know that you can tell a truth that's not the whole truth. Crafty enough to know that you can become smart without becoming wise. Eve and Adam were faced with a choice, one we all make over and over again as we grow older and wiser. Will I trust who God says God is and who God says I am? Or will I trust other names? What did God say over and over again during the wondrous creation song? It's good, they're good, very good, 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 good. They're just as they should be. But you are not as you should be, the snake had suggested. You are not smart enough. God is keeping things from you. You're not good. You don't have what you need for life and flourishing. The fruit will make you smart like God. Eve looked at the fruit. Somewhere in the distance, she heard the tumbling rabbits and the swinging monkeys. Good, good. They are just as they should be. The elephants splashed and the ocelots stretched. Good, good. They have everything they need. She stood in the garden with Adam and she reached out her hand as she chose. Eve ate the fruit. Adam ate the fruit. They didn't trust God. They believed what the snake had said more than they believed what God had said. They grabbed for God's gifts, snatching at knowledge instead of trusting God to teach them. It was like pressing fast forward on their lives, like turning 4 and then 44, like going to college right after kindergarten. All at once they knew what God knows without walking with God. They missed out on the wonder of learning and living. Imagine the weight of their world. Suddenly, their precious garden home looked different. They saw sharp teeth on their animal friends, the laughing sneer of the crafty snake, and their thoughts raced with worry. They looked different. They now felt silly being naked all the time and hurried to cover up their amazing bodies God had created and called good. God came wandering through the garden and called out, "You belong with me. Why aren't you with me?" "I was hiding from you. I trembled because I was naked," said Adam in a small voice. "Oh, my beloved children, who told you that you were naked?" God asked. "Did you eat from the one tree I told you to stay away from?" Adam pointed to Eve, who pointed to the snake. "We were tricked. Things will be different now," God told them, lifting them up, holding their tiny faces. God knew that with knowledge would come choices, and what happened that day would happen again. Eve and Adam would choose to trust untrue names. They would forget that God said, "You are beloved, you are delightful, and you belong." That forgetting would bring pain, confusion, and destruction, the exact opposite of God's dream for them. But God created people to belong with God, and they always will. Places of belonging will always exist. Places where heaven and earth touch. Places for humans to meet with God. Nothing can stop my love for you, my dream for you, God was reminding Eve and Adam. Just as one of the olive trees keeps making olives, which contain the seed to more trees, which make more olives in an everlasting cycle, just as the elephants, the birds, the ocelots, and the oryx all birth young, who grow up to birth more young in an everlasting cycle, Eve would have babies who would grow up to make more babies, who would grow up to make more babies. Parents would care for those babies and teach them to walk close to God. Someday, God promised them, one of those babies will be the place where heaven meets earth once and for all. That baby will grow up to silence the untrue voices and untrue names that convince you not to trust me. He will show you how to live with the knowledge and wisdom of God. He will make all things new. It was time to go. God sent Eve and Adam out from the garden. They are made from the earth and filled with God's breath, which would always twist and tug inside them. They would grasp for goodness and beg for blessing. They would soar and stumble, but they would never be alone. They would learn wisdom by walking with God in the wide and wild world. Friends, if Lent is a season you find yourself struggling with, perhaps a helpful framing might be to consider it a season where we hold up all of the untrue names that we have put on ourselves, on our neighbors, on God, and return to the belovedness, the truth in which we were named. Amen.